Why did he leave everything except me? Have you ever felt like someone you loved deeply just erased you? Like you were never even part of their story? My name is Amber, and I grew up in a quiet suburb in Minnesota. Snowy winters, potluck Sundays, and a father who meant the world to me. My dad, David, was everything to me. After my mom passed when I was 12, it was just the two of us. We bonded over small things: Sunday pancakes, fixing up old furniture, sharing old classic movies on VHS. I always thought he understood me more than anyone else in the world. So imagine my heartbreak when I stood at his funeral just weeks ago and realized I didn't even know half the people in the front row. His new wife, Cassandra, my stepmother, sat there with her perfectly pressed black dress, dabbing her eyes with a tissue that somehow stayed spotless. She married Dad 3 years ago. I was never close to her. She was cold, clipped, and calculated. But I never imagined she'd cut me out like I never existed. After the service, I stayed behind with a few old neighbors. I kept thinking about how Dad always said I was his greatest pride. He used to tell people, "Amber's got my heart and my stubborn streak." I clung to those words now like a lifeline, but that lifeline shattered 2 days later when the will was read. There was no mention of me, not one word. The house? Cassandra's. The lake cabin we restored together one summer? Hers. His retirement savings, investments, even his vintage car collection? All hers. It felt like someone knocked the air out of my lungs. I interrupted the lawyer. There must be a mistake. I'm his only child. But he just looked at me over his glasses and said, "This is the only valid will on file." Cassandra didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just gathered her designer purse, gave a smug little nod, and walked out. And I just sat there, stunned, humiliated, heartbroken. The betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about erasing a relationship that meant everything to me. My dad was gone, and all I had left were memories. No photos, no heirlooms, no piece of him that said, "You mattered to me." I cried in my car that night until my hands went numb. But the pain eventually turned into something else. Not rage, not revenge, something deeper. A quiet, determined fire. I didn't want money. I wanted the truth. And if Cassandra buried it with him, I was going to dig it out. Because someone rewrote my father's final chapter. And I wasn't about to let them keep the pen. The last time we spoke, he knew something was wrong. What if the last conversation you had with someone held a secret you didn't catch until it was too late? 2 weeks before my dad passed, we talked on the phone. It wasn't a long call. He had been sounding tired lately, and I chalked it up to age and the winter chill hitting Minnesota early that year. But now I can't stop replaying his voice. He said, "I've been meaning to update some paperwork. People keep pushing me to do it fast, but I'm not sure I trust everyone's intentions." I thought he meant bills or maybe power of attorney. I never pressed. I just told him to let me know if he needed help. Now I wish I had asked more questions, because maybe that was his subtle way of warning me. Maybe he already knew someone was trying to manipulate him. Cassandra. I started digging into her past, quietly, carefully. I wasn't about to tip her off. I found out she used to be a paralegal. Not surprising. She knew exactly how to work the system, knew the legal lingo, knew how to cover tracks. I started with what I did have: memories. I pulled out my old journals. Dad had once told me that he kept a safe in the lake cabin. Something small, fireproof, behind a loose plank in the closet. It was a random comment he made years ago, after a storm hit the area. I never saw it, but he said, "That safe has my life in it." And I couldn't stop thinking, what if that safe still existed? So I drove 3 hours up to the cabin. Cassandra hadn't moved anything yet. The place still smelled like pine wood and old coffee. I walked in, heart pounding, half expecting to be stopped by a lawyer or a locked door, but nothing. Inside the bedroom closet, I ran my hand along the wood panels until I found it. Loose. Behind it was a small black box, dusty but locked tight. It had a dial. 4 digits. I tried my birthday, wrong. Then I tried his. Still wrong. Then I remembered something. My mom's birthday. He used to say, everything starts and ends with her. But quit. The safe creaked open. Inside were papers, a USB drive, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. I swear my hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated 6 months ago. Ember, if you're reading this, then something didn't go the way I planned. My heart dropped. He knew. He knew someone might interfere. He went on to explain that he had drafted a new will giving me the house, the cabin, and splitting everything else fairly. He said he hadn't finalized it yet with the lawyer, but he was planning to. Then he wrote this line, "If you're ever cut out, don't trust Cassandra, she's not who she pretends to be." That was the moment everything changed for me. This wasn't just family betrayal. This was a setup, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. You're listening to a story on the Family Revenge Stories channel. If this story resonates with you or reminds you of something you've been through, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you won't miss our daily stories. The USB drive told me what she never wanted me to know. What if the key to everything sat untouched for months, waiting in a dusty cabin, just begging to be discovered? That night, I didn't sleep. I took the USB drive home and stared at it like it was a bomb, because in a way, it was. Whatever was inside had the power to confirm my worst fears, or blow them up completely. I plugged it into my laptop and held my breath. At first, I thought it was just paperwork. PDFs, some scanned documents, folders labeled with boring names like estate planning and Cassandra_2021. But then I opened a folder titled For Backup. Inside were voice memos, dozens of them. I clicked on the first one. My dad's voice crackled through the speakers. March 5th. Cassandra pressured me again today. She says I need to sign the new version of the will. But I told her I'm not comfortable excluding Amber. She didn't take it well. I sat there frozen. Memo after memo, detailed arguments, her pushing, him resisting, and then, April 12th. I signed it. I didn't want to, but she said if I didn't, she'd leave. Said she'd tell people I wasn't in my right mind, that Amber would just fight the estate in court. I feel sick. There it was. Coercion, manipulation, emotional blackmail. He'd been forced into signing that will under pressure, probably when he was already sick and vulnerable. That's why the official will didn't mention me, because she got to him first. And now she had everything. I printed transcripts, backed up everything to 2 separate drives, sent copies to a friend out of state just in case. Then I called a probate attorney. Her name was Rachel, and from the second I explained what I had, she didn't blink. Ember, what you're describing isn't just morally wrong. If we can prove this, it's legal grounds to challenge the will. For the first time since Dad died, I felt like I could breathe. Rachel explained the process. We'd file a petition to contest the will, submit the recordings, the letter, the safe discovery, and argue that the most recent will wasn't valid due to undue influence. But it wasn't going to be easy. Cassandra had already filed the original will with the county. The assets were in her name. And probate court moves slowly. When Cassandra got wind of the challenge, probably from her lawyer, she texted me for the first time in months. It read, "You're embarrassing yourself. Walk away while you still can." I stared at it, my hands shaking. Not with fear, but with something colder. Resolve. She thought I was still the same quiet daughter who never made waves. She forgot I was my father's daughter, and I wasn't walking away. I was walking into court, with truth as my witness. She smiled in court like she'd already won. Have you ever looked someone in the eye and realized they weren't afraid? Because they truly believed you didn't matter? That's how Cassandra looked at me the day of our first court hearing. Smug, untouched, like she was there for a brunch reservation, not a probate dispute over the man we both claimed to love. She wore a sleek navy pantsuit, heels clicking with every step. I kept my outfit simple: black slacks, a cardigan, and Dad's old wristwatch. I wanted something of his with me. Something real. Rachel stood by my side, calm and razor sharp. We weren't filing a lawsuit that day. We were requesting a formal hearing to challenge the validity of the will, but even that sent shockwaves. When Cassandra's lawyer objected, the judge raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Whitaker," he said, "you're telling me there are handwritten letters, audio files, and evidence of a concealed safe, and you believe this shouldn't be explored?" Her lawyer sputtered. Cassandra didn't flinch. The judge approved our petition. A formal investigation into the will's validity was underway. It wasn't a win yet, but it was the first crack in her wall. Afterward, in the hallway, Cassandra approached me. "You're wasting everyone's time, Amber," she said quietly. "Your father made his choice." I stared at her. "He didn't choose, you pushed." She didn't respond, just smiled. That same fake, glossy smile she used to give neighbors at barbecues. But behind that smile, I saw something new. Fear. Not panic, not yet, but a flicker of unease. And that was enough to keep going. Rachel and I worked tirelessly over the next few weeks. We brought in a handwriting expert to authenticate my dad's letter. The voice memos were cleaned up by an audio engineer and verified. Rachel subpoenaed my dad's estate lawyer, hoping he'd seen or discussed the revised will Dad mentioned. What we didn't expect was what came next. The lawyer said something that made my stomach turn. I remember David asking about updating the will, but the last time we spoke, he said Cassandra had already arranged a notary and would handle it herself. He never sent me the final draft. That meant the version submitted to probate, the one cutting me out, was signed without legal oversight. Just Cassandra, a notary, and my father, who may have been too weak or pressured to say no, which opened the door for doubt. And doubt in probate court is powerful. But the more evidence we gathered, the more Cassandra pushed back. She filed a motion to dismiss, claimed I was a bitter daughter trying to cash in. She even accused me of fabricating the voice recordings. It was a desperate move. And it backfired. The judge denied her motion and scheduled a formal evidentiary hearing. The court was finally going to hear the truth. And the truth was going to sting. Because no matter how many times Cassandra tried to silence me, I had my father's voice. And soon everyone else would hear it too. You're listening to a story on the Family Revenge Stories channel. If this story resonates with you or reminds you of something you've been through, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you won't miss our daily stories. She thought no one saw, but someone did. What if the person who helped bury the truth turned out to be the one to dig it back up? The week of the evidentiary hearing, Rachel and I were deep in prep mode. We had recordings, the letter, the safe discovery, a timeline of Dad's health records to show he wasn't in a good state of mind when the will was signed. But Cassandra still had one thing on her side: appearances. She painted herself as the grieving widow, a woman who sacrificed everything to care for her husband. She even claimed Dad's memory had started to go in his final year, something I never saw and no doctor ever confirmed. I kept thinking, someone must have been around, someone who saw what was happening when I wasn't there. And then I remembered Luis. Luis was the caretaker who worked weekends at the lake cabin. He was mostly quiet, but kind. He and Dad got along well, talked about fishing and woodworking. I tracked him down through an old business card Dad had left in a drawer. I wasn't sure if he'd even respond, but he did. And what he told me changed everything. "Your dad wasn't himself the last few months," he said. "But not because he was sick, he was anxious, jumpier, always locking doors. I asked once if everything was okay, and he just said, Some people want too much. Luis also mentioned something strange. Cassandra started coming up to the cabin alone. Often. She said she was prepping it to sell, he recalled. But your dad never talked about selling. Then came the kicker. Sometime I walked in on them arguing. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I heard her say, "If you don't sign it, I'll walk. And don't think Amber's gonna save you." My jaw dropped. Luis had no idea about the will or the court case, but he just gave me exactly what we needed. A first-hand witness to Cassandra's manipulation. Rachel nearly jumped out of her chair when I told her. We added Luis to our witness list immediately. The day of the hearing, the courtroom felt heavier, like everyone could feel what was coming. I took the stand first. I read my father's letter out loud. My voice cracked halfway through, but I didn't stop. Then we played the recordings. His voice, raw and real, filling the room. Cassandra sat frozen. Then Luis took the stand. He was calm, respectful, but unshakable. He repeated what he'd told us word for word. He described how Dad seemed afraid, how Cassandra isolated him, how she talked about selling the cabin behind his back. The room was silent when he finished. Cassandra's lawyer tried to discredit him. "You're just a handyman. Why should we take your word over my client's?" Luis didn't flinch. Because I was there. That moment hit hard. Because in a case built on paper trails and recordings, it was a simple sentence from a quiet man that finally shifted the air. And Cassandra knew it. For the first time since this all started, she looked worried. She lied under oath. But the truth was already out. What do you do when someone's lies are so polished they actually believe them? Cassandra took the stand with the grace of a woman who'd been rehearsing her whole life. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue before answering a single question, claimed she had loved David with all her heart, claimed I had distanced myself years ago, and only came around when money was involved. And then she said the words that made my blood boil. David was forgetful. He didn't always know what he was signing. The implication was clear. She was trying to paint herself as a protector, not a manipulator, and my dad? Just an old man slipping into confusion. But the judge wasn't buying it. Not after everything Luis had testified to. Not after hearing Dad's own words on tape. Rachel stood up and calmly asked, "Do you remember signing the will with David?" Cassandra nodded. Of course, I was present. We had it notarized at the kitchen table. And was David alone with the notary at any point? Rachel pressed. Cassandra blinked. No. We were both there. Rachel didn't flinch. She pulled out a printed page and handed it to the judge. This is a statement from the notary who signed the document. She said David was brought into the room by Cassandra, told where to sign, and barely spoke. When the notary asked if he understood what he was signing, he nodded once. She said he looked dazed and tired. Cassandra went pale. And when asked why she never returned to work for Cassandra after that day, the notary said, quote, "It felt wrong. Like I walked into something I wasn't supposed to see." The courtroom was silent. Cassandra's lawyer objected, of course, but the judge allowed it, especially after we revealed that the notary had signed an affidavit confirming the account. That should have been enough. But it wasn't the knockout moment. That came from a box of old tax records found in the lake cabin. I hadn't gone through everything yet, but Rachel's intern did, and inside that box was a manila envelope. It held an unsigned draft of the updated will, the one my dad mentioned in his letter, the one he said he hadn't finalized yet, but clearly intended to submit. It named me as the sole heir to the lake cabin and co-beneficiary of everything else. It was dated just 2 weeks before the version Cassandra submitted. Rachel held it up in court. This shows clear intent. The only thing missing is a signature, one that he may never have had the chance to give because he was pressured into signing Cassandra's version instead. Cassandra looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. It was the first time I saw the cracks break open. No more smug smiles. No more cool, collected performances. Just panic. because her carefully built lie was collapsing. And this time, she couldn't talk her way out of it. You're listening to a story on the Family Revenge Stories channel. If this story resonates with you or reminds you of something you've been through, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you won't miss our daily stories. She tried one last move, and it backfired spectacularly. What would you do if the person who betrayed you tried to settle just to keep the truth from coming out? 2 days after the evidentiary hearing, Cassandra's lawyer contacted Rachel. I was at home in my kitchen, staring out at the Minnesota snow piling up on the porch railing, when Rachel called. She wants to settle, she said. I didn't say anything right away. She's offering you $150,000 0 cents in exchange for dropping the challenge. No trial, no admission of wrongdoing. I let the words hang in the air. It wasn't about the money. It never was. I had a full-time job, my own apartment, and I wasn't drowning. What I wanted wasn't a payout. It was validation. It was the truth on record. She's scared, I said quietly. Rathelin deny it. Her case is crumbling. But she's hoping the money will make this all disappear before the judge makes a final ruling. I turned the offer down. Cassandra didn't take that well. 3 days later, I got a letter from her attorney claiming I had tampered with the documents from the cabin, that I had planted the unsigned draft will. It was a ridiculous last-ditch attempt to paint me as the villain. But it was also a gift, because it told the court everything they needed to know about how far she was willing to go. Raheza submitted a rebuttal along with timestamps, witness statements, and photos proving chain of custody for everything we found. And then, the bombshell. The judge issued an order freezing all estate assets immediately. Cassandra's access? Gone. She couldn't sell, move, or touch a single item under the estate's name. Not the house, not the cabin, not even the vintage car collection Dad had poured his weekends into. That's when she snapped. She showed up at my apartment. Yes, at my actual door. I opened it and found her standing in the snow, hair pulled back tight, eyes red and furious. This is what you wanted, isn't it? She hissed. To ruin my life, to take everything. No, I said. I just wanted what was right. You're the one who took everything. She stepped forward, but I didn't move. I was done being afraid of her. I loved your father, she said, her voice cracking. And he loved me, I said. That's why he tried to fix it before he died. You're the one who buried the truth. She turned and left without another word. That night I cried. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because I finally let myself feel everything. The grief, the betrayal, the weight of all I'd been carrying since the funeral. And when I woke up the next morning, I was clear. The hearing wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about honoring the man who raised me. And I wasn't stopping until the court knew exactly who he really was. And exactly what she had done to him. The judge read the ruling, and I finally breathed again. Have you ever waited so long for justice that when it finally comes, you almost don't believe it? The final hearing was quiet. No jury. Just the judge, the lawyers, Cassandra, and me. A handful of others sat in the gallery. Rachel beside me, Luis in the back, and a few people from my dad's old neighborhood who'd heard what was happening and showed up in silent support. Cassandra sat across the aisle. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Her posture was stiff, her mouth pressed in a tight line. The confidence was gone. The mask had cracked too many times. When the judge entered and took his seat, the room felt like it stopped breathing. He reviewed the timeline, the audio recordings, the handwritten letter, the testimony from Luis, the unsigned draft of the revised will, and the notary's affidavit. It had been a long, methodical process, but today it would all come to a close. And then he said the words I will never forget. This court finds sufficient evidence of undue influence in the execution of the contested will. Based on the testimony and documentation provided, it is the court's decision to deem the April 2022 will invalid. I covered my mouth with both hands. Tears welled in my eyes. and I wasn't the only one. The judge continued. In the absence of a valid, signed, updated will, the estate will revert to the most recent equitable draft with verifiable intent, naming Amber Whitaker as a co-beneficiary and sole heir to the lake cabin. I don't remember what Cassandra did. Maybe she flinched, maybe she cried. But I didn't look at her, not once. Because in that moment, I wasn't thinking about revenge or money or anything she took. I was thinking about my dad, about Sunday pancakes, about sanding down the porch at the cabin, about how he always told me, stand up for what's right, even if you have to do it alone. I had done that, and now, finally, I could breathe again. Over the next few months, the estate was restructured. Cassandra fought for every scrap, but her credibility was gone. She walked away with less than she started with, and more enemies than she ever saw coming. Me? I didn't sell the cabin. I fixed it up instead, repainted the porch, rehung the wind chimes, put up a photo of Dad in the hallway, one where he's laughing at the lake, holding a coffee mug and wearing his old Vikings cap. And beside it, I framed the letter he wrote me. The one that saved everything. Sometimes I go out there just to sit in silence and listen to the wind in the trees. It's peaceful now, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm home again. Not because of the property, but because I fought for my father's voice when no one else would. She left me with nothing but memories, but I turned them into justice. You're listening to a story on the Family Revenge Stories channel. If this story resonates with you or reminds you of something you've been through, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you won't miss our daily stories.